It's called Coaching Connection. It's called Coaching Connection. It's called Coaching Connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. This is episode number 47 of Coaching Connections. I'm your host, Coach Marcus Alvarado, and I'm gonna be honest with you. My voice is shot. I have no idea what happened. I just kind of woke up and it sounds like this, but you know, I know it'll be better in a couple of days, but I wanted to drop the episode now. This is my pup. She's Katara. She's 5 months old, 57 pounds, Cane Corso, a little precious little girl. Anyway, on this trip, man, to Phoenix at the NABC Convention, I got to connect with so many great people. Myself, Coach Lopez, and Coach Salazar took the trip from San Antonio to Phoenix. I got to connect with all of our guys at the LABC Luncheon, the Latino Association of Basketball Coaches. Got a chance to connect with my guy Armando over at NAREP. Him and Gary do a phenomenal job with their real estate stuff, and so many cool people along the way. But while we were in Phoenix, I got a chance to interview Coach Lucas Ramirez from LABC. He's from Phoenix. And Coach Omar Sanchez from Cali, who's also a part of the LABC. And I appreciate those guys so much, and I cherish their friendship. At the end of this episode, we do have our second installment of the Coach's Office, where we have coaches interviewing other coaches and just talking hoops. And for that one, we got Coach Ernest Lopez interviewing Coach John Hirst. And they've never met each other before the moment, and I can't wait to share with you guys. This is episode 47, Coaching Connections. Myself, my puppy Katara. Let's get it.
It's called Coaching Connection. It's called Coaching Connection.
Well, first, Lucas, I just want to say I appreciate you, man.
Absolutely,
for
man.
taking the time to talk. I appreciate everything you do, and I appreciate the hospitality here in Phoenix. It's
Absolutely.
beautiful. But this is amazing, seeing the backdrop here.
No, absolutely. Phoenix is a special place, and it's always awesome when the Final Four is here, and it's great when you're able to connect and just spend a lot of time together. So I appreciate it.
I know we did this back during COVID, the first time when we started the podcast, and it was more of almost a way to kill time. We had nothing to do, right? But I do love connecting with coaches and talking to them about the stories. But for those that maybe didn't watch that episode 3 years ago, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you work.
Yeah, I'm currently the head coach at Saguaro High School in Scottsdale, so not too far from here. Just finished my 4th season. When we first chatted, that was right when I got the job, a few months after that.
Oh, wow.
The big thing was, prior to that, I spent a lot of time at the high school level as an assistant. Spent 4 years at North Canyon High School, spent 4 years at Horizon High School in Scottsdale, and then I also spent some time at Phoenix College for 2 years, and awesome experience at the junior college level, and it was something that really prepared me for, I think, where I'm at now. And so between all my experiences at the high school level as an assistant and at the junior college and even doing some AAU, it really prepared me to run my own program right now.
That's awesome. And it looks like we're in a big hiking spot, so we just had some hikers detour over there. But we appreciate their hospitality. We saw a sign that said Phoenix was like the nicest city in the country, but everybody's been real great. That's just an example there. I know you live here in Phoenix. Mm-hmm. But you've kind of lived all over the country. But for some reason, you're a huge Spurs fan, right? Which is great. It's great. So tell me about some of the things that have drawn you to the ball club.
Well, I lived in Cedar Park, Texas for 6 years when I was younger. So that definitely played a part in it, for sure. My first NBA game, I was 4 or 5 years old. Mm-hmm. And it was Spurs-Lakers. I remember going to the Alamo Dome with my dad, and so it was great. We'd go to a couple games every season when we lived there, and the more time I think I got understanding the game and following the game, especially when I started coaching. Yeah. You really grow to appreciate someone like Coach Pop and the job that he's done and is still doing, and so it's been really cool to become a fan of their club over the years, but. Definitely living in Texas was the start of that connection for sure.
Being an example of the way Pop is, have you found yourself taking some of the little nuances that the Spurs implement in their ball club and you've kind of instilled in your own program?
Yeah, well, I think the one thing to take away is with Coach Pop is like he's authentically himself. Like he doesn't try to be anybody he isn't. So I think from a coaching perspective, like it's something that I always try and do is just be myself. And from a ball ball club perspective, how they play. I mean, sharing the ball, moving it efficiently, those are all things that I think any of us coaches, whether you're a fan of them or not, you grow to appreciate. And so that's something that we always try to instill with our guys is team first and the we over me.
For sure.
And going from a good shot to a great shot and just being very selfless. I mean, it's something to really aspire to model. It's hard,
Yeah.
but I mean, just the selflessness, the willingness to play as one unit is what made them really special, the last 20 years or longer. And it's something that we definitely try to aspire to be for sure.
How you doing, man? So real briefly, tell me your thoughts on Wemby.
I mean, it's like hard to find words. Obviously, he's like the unicorn. Very unique. No one like him.
And just the thing that this might be the worst version of Wemby we ever see.
That is,
aside from an old man Wemby.
Yeah, no,
down the road, but that's scary.
That is
scary.
I read that somewhere along the way, probably earlier in the basketball season, probably the first month, and someone shared that on Twitter. It was like, just a reminder, this is like the worst he's going to be probably.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I was actually at the game. They played back-to-back in Phoenix.
Oh, nice.
And he had, probably at this juncture, one of the best games of his career, going head-to-head with KD. And I mean, it was just spectacular. I mean, it was fun to see, for sure.
Oh, I thought he was going to come this way. People were nice, man. They kind of detour.
People are cool, yeah, no doubt.
Huh?
I'm still going.
Yeah.
Just bloopers.
Yeah, added to the Be Real. How you doing?
Right, sit down, tell you what, take a picture, everybody comes
Yeah. It's nice. It's nice. We're rolling. All right. The National Association of Basketball Coaches.
Yes.
It's a huge deal. The conference follows the Final Four every year, which is why we're all here in Phoenix, right? But you were awarded one of the Guardians of the Game Award, which is a huge honor. Tell me what that means to you.
It means a lot. It's incredible. It's humbling. When I got the email and they said that I was selected, one, I was like, how did you get my name? It's like, who nominated me?
Yeah.
So it's really, really special. And then for it to be for inclusion, obviously incredibly important for us and our organization with the LABC.
Yes, sir.
And I was having this conversation the other day, like, yeah, I was chosen, but it's really an award for everybody in our organization and everyone who's found different ways to promote it. Like through your social media, through our organization's social media, and it really comes from Jason's vision.
Yes,
Coach Ludwig's vision, and without him, there wouldn't be any organization to push and promote.
Absolutely.
So I wouldn't be in the position to receive the award. And then without guys like Frank Martin or Ron Sanchez, Tony Pujol, you can keep going down the list of guys, countless guys who have been in elevated positions, prominent positions.
Kind of paved the way for us.
To pave the way and give someone for us to look up to and aspire to be like.
Absolutely.
So, it's a credit to everybody, but it's definitely really, really humbling for sure.
And all those guys have been, and when you go to these luncheons, and we'll get to the LABC in here in a minute, I just want to note that all of those guys are so open and welcoming and just looking to help you in any way possible.
Yeah.
And so I thought that's a beautiful thing about those guys that are maybe in elevated positions, just looking out for other coaches.
No, absolutely. They're authentic, they're genuine, they're real. They'll do whatever they can to help you, and I mean, that's how we continue to grow, is working with each other and helping each other, and it's exactly what we kind of set out to do with our organization.
Going back real quick, you said social media. Nowadays in social media, you see a lot of bad, a lot of negative, a lot of people going at each other. But I've noticed with your social media, just your personal one, you share everything positive. Whether it's your own team, whether it's the LABC, whether it's other teams at school, football, volleyball, tennis, a debate club, or whatever positive is happening, Lucas is sharing and spreading that positivity, even if it's just a friend that that got a promotion or did something good. So What are some ways that you try to utilize that tool of social media to provide that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just good to celebrate things and celebrate other people and be positive. And I've joked around, probably half joking, honestly. When I say a lot of the things I reshare, I do it for myself. To have a positive message and have something out there. But it's kind that people notice that, and it's cool that people notice that, just sharing things that aren't even really about yourself, but if it's somebody else in your building, your organization, your school, because they deserve to be seen and be heard. And so, I mean, any little positive juice we can put out there, the world needs it. And life's too short to be caught up with, being negative. And it's really easy to be negative nowadays.
Especially on social media.
If you look everywhere, there's going to be something negative or an opinion or, whatever. And part of it's promoting positivity and part of it's just having fun with it too. You can't take things too seriously all the time.
Absolutely. Moving back towards the LABC, the Latino Association of Basketball Coaches, what does it mean to you?
Man, it means everything. It's super cool to have an organization and a group that Jason Ludwig started that, we can come together in fellowship and community and network and build genuine relationships. And then it's cool too because you're able to see people who look like you, talk like you, have similar last name or heritage, background. And that's what's really cool. Because when I first started coaching, I never thought about like, oh, I wonder if there's a organization for Latino coaches. I never even really thought about like who else is out there.
For sure.
You kind of just are
in your own little bubble.
In your own little bubble, yeah. It's a great way to put it. And the first time, I don't remember the order of it happening, but there was an article about Frank Martin, Orlando Antigua, and they were playing against each other. It was a little special on ESPN.
Yes, sir.
And it talked about Frank and Orlando being, one of the few Latino coaches currently, and it talked about a couple other assistants in the business or people trying to grow in the business. And one of the guys named in the article was Jason.
Okay.
And then, it said, oh, he's at Arizona State. And I'm like, oh, no way. I had no idea this guy's at ASU. He's 20 minutes away from me.
Connect.
And that's kind of how our relationship started was, just him being at Arizona State, wanted to go watch a couple practices. And then, I always told Jason throughout the years, hey, let me know how I can help you grow this thing. What can we do?
Yeah.
So it's been really cool to see it evolve from just the luncheon every year to during the pandemic, just like yourself creating a podcast to interview different leaders and people, in the community, same with us. Like that was when Jason picked up the phone and was like, hey, we have nothing better to do right now.
Let's do some Zoom calls.
Let's do some Zoom calls.
Yep.
Let's find ways to brainstorm and just find a way to grow the organization. And it's been really, really cool just to be a small part in that. We have a great board, great members, and it's a collective effort to really grow it out.
So where do you want to see it grow into?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sky's the limit for the organization. I think continuing to find ways to add value to the members,
Yes, sir.
Whether it's clinics, networking opportunities, mentorship, and these are things that we've already started,
Absolutely.
but just adding layers to it. And, I think the one thing that's really important is there's so many more coaches out there. I think at the grassroots, high school level, AAU levels, and coaches around the world. So I think there's thousands of more coaches that we can reach.
Reach and connect.
Because some people think, hey, if I'm not a college coach, like maybe it's not worth it.
Yeah, for sure.
But
it totally is. Just
for sure.
A quick story, so when I went to my first luncheon the last time, it was in San Antonio. Orlando Mendez Valdez said, hey, my buddy Jason, they have this organization, they're having a luncheon at Casa Rio. You should go. I said, okay, I'll check it out. And I was a little nervous because I didn't think there was going to be any other high school coaches there. And there really wasn't too many.
Yeah.
But I did meet my future assistant coach there at the luncheon. And so when I was looking for an assistant coach the last time, he reached out to me, and we already had that connection.
Yeah.
And it made things easier. So the networking is all there.
No, absolutely. And there's hesitation, I think, if you're really young and you're new in coaching and in the business, and especially if you want to aspire to advance in the business, it can be intimidating, like in any room you step into if you're a young early 20s coach or, someone just getting into it, or having hesitation to be like, there's so many other coaching groups out there. But what makes it special is just the cultural connection and finding someone who's similar to you, and so I think the sky's the limit. I think we've done a lot of great things in a short period of time, and on the men and women's side.
Absolutely.
And just being able to connect and find more members around the world, around the country, at the high school level, the grassroots level, because it's easier to spot guys in college,
Yeah.
right? Just with their platform.
Absolutely.
And we're lucky that, I would not argue, I would say the majority of our college coaches are engaged with us.
And even the guys that are a little elevated, you look at some of the best in the country on the men's and women's side. They participate fully in what the
Absolutely,
business is.
and even weekends like this here at the Final Four, you got guys who might not have made it in town, but they're texting, they're calling, saying, "Man, I want you to know we're thinking about you and the organization. Let me know what I can do to help." And that's when you got something really cool, is when people know, like, all right, I can't make it to the Final Four. I got a family obligation or this obligation, but the fact that it's still on their mind, that they know that they're missing something that's important to them.
Yes, sir.
Just speaks, volumes, I think, to what we're building over time.
So you're involved in NABC, LABC, all over your campus, and that's just like the tip of the iceberg on the things that I see that you do. For young coaches out there, how important is it to get out of their box a little bit and get involved and then just kind of do more?
Yeah, I think just it's life, right? Like, get out of your comfort zone.
For sure.
And I've been lucky. Like, I naturally have my whole life, even when I was a teenager, even a kid growing up, like, it was never a problem for me to walk into a room and meet people and go up to them. And so for me, like, I've been blessed. It's always come natural to me. But, I think anybody in the business knows, like, it's relationships.
Yes,
It shouldn't be just transactional. It should be authentic. And the way to do that is to just genuinely put yourself out there and ask questions and try and connect and find ways to get better and learn, whether it's trying to navigate the journey or, X's and O's, so it's a two-way street. There's a lot of things that, we can do to improve and grow every day,
And you don't want to be shy or too nervous to ask questions. Get outside of yourself a little bit and ask. I wasn't going to wear a hat today, but I haven't got a haircut. I didn't bring my razors. I forgot my razors.
How you doing? Good.
Doing well, sir. Did you enjoy your trip? Yes, sir.
How you doing?
Hello, sir. All right, so next year, Final Four, NABC Conference in San Antonio, LABC Luncheon in San Antonio. Real quick, send a quick invite to any San Antonio coaches interested, Texas area coaches interested. What can they expect if they join us, and what are you looking forward to in San Antonio?
Yeah, first off, all coaches in Texas, with Latino background, Hispanic background, it's a must-attend event, and what to expect, opportunity to enjoy a good meal. And a drink or two, but more importantly, just the ability to connect with people within your own community and the chance to build genuine, authentic relationships that will last you your entire life.
For sure.
Your professional career, your personal lives, and then also too, just an opportunity to become a part of something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what's really cool is. Being able to serve in a capacity where you're helping others and you're making an impact. So it's really special, and we look forward to seeing everybody who's in town in San Antonio next year.
Lucas, I appreciate
Thanks,
you, my
brother.
brother. Yes, sir.
Appreciate you, man.
It's called Coaching Connection. It's called Coaching Connection.
All right, so first off, Omar, I want to say thanks, man. I appreciate you taking some time to talk.
Of course, man. I couldn't pass up the opportunity, man, for sure.
Yeah. So how you enjoying Phoenix so far?
Phoenix has been great, man. The networking, the amount of people you meet, the functions that you kind of partake in are so great to kind of the networking opportunity you get.
I was telling Lucas earlier that I was gonna wear a hat, but I didn't bring my razors, so I couldn't cut my hair. So I said, you got a fresh shave, but I'm gonna keep my hat on for that
All
one,
right.
right? So we're gonna kind of jump right into it. Tell me a little bit about what you do right now as an athletic director and where you work, and then your coaching journey along the way to get there.
Yeah, man. So I'm currently the director of athletics for St. Mary's College High School in Berkeley. It's a private Catholic LaSallian school. My journey through coaching takes me through, man, I jumped into coaching as soon as I was done playing pro ball in Mexico. I played a very short stint and then decided to get into my career.
Yes, sir.
I'd actually taken the CSCS, which is the Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist exam, which you can only take if you have a college degree. So I took that, passed it, went and played, and so I just started. I came back to where it all began for me at Holy Names, where I finished my career, and started a strength conditioning program there. I was an assistant coach with the women, started on the women's side, and then just evolved from there, man. And so I paid my dues as an assistant coach, became a head coach. Holy Names was only a school of about 800. I think we got up to like 1250 in our highest point. But I had to wear multiple hats. So I was a director of strength and conditioning. I was an associate athletic director, and an assistant men's basketball coach, and transitioned to the head role after 8 years of being an assistant.
So, for anybody that's along the journey, right? Everybody's at different points.
Right.
Some are 20, 30 years in, some are 5, 10 years in. But at some point, people look to make a transition out of coaching and get into another role.
Yeah.
So when did you know it was time to make that jump? And any advice to somebody that's trying to make a decision on when they feel like it is or may not be time?
Yeah, I think I didn't know it was time. Like for me, it just, I'm always, I have what's called I developed these like podium pillars, like when you win a race, there's like first, second, and third.
Yep.
And so like I call them podium pillars. And so with those, my first podium pillar is always my faith. So I'm always led by faith. And so being in a position where, I left coaching a week before the pandemic, not knowing a pandemic was happening. And so then I started doing some other stuff. I wrote a book, started to write a book. And my buddy over at De La Salle reached out to me and said, hey, man, there's a chem position if you want to try and come and teach chemistry. I taught strength conditioning and some science courses at Holy Names as well. But I didn't think I was going to, so I wasn't doing anything. I went and did that. They offered me a full-time role. And then a week later, I got offered this AD role.
Oh, wow.
And the AD role wasn't even something I interviewed for. It just turned into an interview with the principal, Dr. Imperial.
Yes, sir.
We, a 30-minute discussion turned into a 3-hour talk.
Yeah.
And so I was offered the job as I left the interview.
So that means he was pretty impressed just with how you carried yourself. It sounds like you went into that not really knowing what it was going to become, and he saw something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm old school when it comes to certain things. Like if I'm going to meet with someone and it has to do someone a job, I'm going to wear a suit.
Yeah.
I think, that kind of initiated the interest of like, okay, open the door.
For sure.
And then we had discussions around vision and athletics. And then, like I said, like by the end of it, he's like, are you interested in the AD position? We have one just opened up. And so I requested to meet with some coaches, some student athletes. And then I basically counter offered them with something that I wanted and
It worked out.
didn't even flinch.
Wow.
And so being led by faith, man, I think it's important that do I miss coaching? Absolutely. Do I wish I'm still in the trenches? Absolutely. I love that part of it. But it just felt right.
Yeah.
And so I'm always led through faith in my heart. And so it felt right when I took the position. And my daughters are older, man. I got 2 girls that are, in fairness to them, I need to be around and
Have some time for them.
I have a 9th grader and I have a 6th grader. And my 9th grader goes to school with me.
Nice.
I wouldn't pass that up for anything, man. Having conversations with her and, about anything, life in general, having that relationship to me is so invaluable.
You talked about missing it. What are some of the things that you miss the most about coaching itself?
Well, when I became a head coach, I don't think I was ready to be a head coach, to be honest with you. Like everybody wants to be a head coach, but people don't realize what it takes to be a head coach.
For sure.
I had only been an assistant coach for 8 years, which I figured I gave myself, anywhere between 10 to 12 before I start. But I was in a situation where my mentor, we transitioned the school from an NAIA school to D2 NCAA. And so he had to choose. He was the basketball coach, and he had to choose to be an AD or a basketball coach.
Gotcha.
So that opportunity presented itself that I couldn't pass up.
Yeah. Ready or not, you got to take it.
Ready
Gotta
or
jump on
not, yeah. And I think for us, we take positions that sometimes are not the best positions,
Yeah.
but for me, there was an opportunity I couldn't pass up, and being a head coach and having a vision for something and trying to implement that vision is to me so timeless. The journey itself, like journeys that you go through, I love the journey.
Yes, sir.
Now as an athletic director, like I talk to all my coaches about the journey.
The journey.
Like enjoy the journey, man.
Yeah.
Like don't focus too much on the winning part. Like develop what you're going to be about. Focus on that, and the winning takes care of itself.
Absolutely.
So for me, I just miss those journeys that you go with a group of individuals that you've developed relationships with, that you spend a lot of time in the trenches with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and when you spend so much time putting so much energy into something, and then you see how it starts to play out, and you see the fruits of your labor pay off, and it's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more on that. And then, I always say these are lifelong relationships. When you recruit a kid and you spend, a year, 2 years getting to know them, their family, I still talk to my first recruit that I recruited ever as a head coach.
Really?
Yeah. I still talk to their family, text message with the mom. She was an amazing mom that helped us with some of this planning stuff. She was my first quote unquote team mom,
Yeah.
And she was, the kid was from modern day. He was an awesome kid.
Wow.
And I still have relationships with some of the families to this day. So it's been great.
That's good. Talk to you a little bit about that impact, though, right? So, like, I feel like coaches have this ability to connect with people, whether it's their kids, the families, other coaches, the people in the community. So just talk about the power and the influence a coach can have on a lot of those relationships.
I think it's important to focus when you're a head coach, especially on being transformational, not transactional.
Absolutely.
And in order to be transformational, you need to be relational. And when you're relational, kids know that you care about them on a deeper level.
Yeah.
When you're transactional, they know it's a business transaction, and it's like, okay, if I do this, I get rewarded. If I don't do this, I'm not going to get rewarded.
Yeah. They're probably less willing to run through a brick wall for you if they know it's just a transactional relationship.
I've had recruiting visits from kids where I would tell them straight up, like, I want you to come to me not because it's going to be easy, because it's going to be hard. I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to get you outside your comfort zone. We only grow in a place of being uncomfortable. And one of my models to this day is to learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's just life, But in those relational situations that you have with players, I mean, in the last 2 months, 3 months, I got a kid that is an entrepreneur. I got a kid that opened up a vegan burger joint in Fresno.
That's awesome.
I got 2 kids that graduated from chiropractor school that are now chiropractors and are trying to open up their own practice. Like, to me, like, that's the win.
For sure.
Those are the wins you want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As a coach, do we all want to win? Absolutely. But at the end of the year, there's only going to be one in each division. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And so you have to be able to stand for something, and in learning to be relational with kids, you get that, right? You're going to give it your best, and as long as you know you gave it your best, you can live with that.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. And there was a coach in San Antonio, Coach Torres. He had told me one time, he's like, winning is important. Everyone wants to win. Everyone wants a championship. But again, at the end of the day, it's one team wins.
Yep.
Right? So those championships, cool. But the championship bonds that you develop with those kids is what's really important. And then that will last throughout a lifetime. And what they learn through athletics will carry with them the rest of their life.
So I was fortunate enough to recruit Serbia, Australia, and pretty much all over the U.S. But you talk about lifelong relationships. I had a kid from Seguin, Texas.
Oh, wow.
That I recruited, and amazing kid. He came to me, and I would always see him writing. And all the male role models in his life were incarcerated. He was writing to them in prison.
Gotcha.
And I really worked hard to make sure that kid understood his value. And I made him make some changes in his life. But he was teammates with a Serbian kid.
Oh, wow.
Right? And so I got David to graduate. I got David, he played short stint overseas. He just now bought his house. He bought his aunt a house. He actually lives in San Antonio.
Oh, okay.
And but he's good friends with a Serbian kid. when would a kid from Seguin, Texas ever have a true friendship with someone in Serbia,
Yeah.
right?
Well, athletics and sports,
Yeah,
right? It
and
brings
that's
people
the
together.
thing, man. It brings people together. And so when you're being relational with your players, they learn to be. It's like if you have kids, they're always going to see the parents and follow their lead.
For sure.
As coaches, your kids are always going to be an extension of you.
And your identity.
Yep. And so if you're being transactional, the kids are going to be transactional with themselves.
Yeah.
So you got to be very adamant and very purposeful in how you approach it, this relational piece. You know?
Yeah, I try my best around our guys to just model what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to carry yourself, and just be an example of daily of how you do those things, because I think they watch more than they listen, right?
Absolutely.
So they're watching what you do when you interact with people. They're watching what you say. How do you handle pressure situations?
Yeah.
What are you going to do when you run into another off the floor situation and it's stressful? How do you
Yeah.
handle stress, right? And they're watching all of that, and so I think it's important that coaches continue to model more than do what I say and not what I do, right?
Yeah.
Just how you carry yourself is more important.
Absolutely. I mean, to this day, I still get kids that call me that play for me. It's like, hey, coach, can you send me a program?
Yeah.
Because I was big on. So when I did my master's, I developed a high performance pyramid, and my thesis was about developing year-round programs for sports. And but I developed this high performance pyramid because I read a couple books on the business Harvard business law books, and one of them was on management. And it talked about taking some of these CEOs and how do you get these people to fully function at a high level. And these people were bad people,
Yes, sir.
not good CEOs, right? And so they developed this curriculum for them and treated them like athletes, meaning you had to train, you had to do all this other stuff. So it prompted me to create this high performance pyramid. The physical foundation is always the base of where you start your pyramid, right?
Yes, sir.
And you know the whole saying of fatigue makes a fool out of all of us. Well, for me, physical capacity is so important to really build, because from there you can really build a mental and focus capacity. And I've always been in institutions where faith is important, and so I always say your spiritual capacity is always, you know, the kind of the cherry on top, the top of the pyramid.
Yes, sir.
That one can't function without the other, but your foundation has to be really, really set.
Yeah.
And so I was always big on fitness. And so, like I said, kids reach out to me to this day, hey, coach, can you send me that program we did in college? Like, it really got me in shape. Or,
Yeah.
you know, kids would always say, hey, one thing we never worried about is were we in shape or were we strong? And that was kind of my niche. Like, hey, we might not be the best team, but we're going to go to war.
We're going to battle. We're
Yeah.
going to be strong.
Yeah.
We're going to not get tired.
Yeah, we're going to outlast our opponents.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of been who I've been as a person is, you know, you might be more talented than me, but I'm going to outcompete you.
But it kind of goes back to, you know, your players, your teams, the people that are working or playing for you are going to assume the identity of the person leading the group.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. And so I've been fortunate with that.
So talk real quick. You said mentor earlier, but you know, how important is it to have mentors in leadership roles? People that you can lean on when things get difficult and call on and talk to and kind of have their support.
Yeah, I think culturally for us as Latinos,
Yes, sir.
mentorship is like, I think it affects our ego.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think the more I study people, the more I study successful people, no one's gotten there on their own.
No.
And we can't be afraid to have someone that we can be vulnerable with and help our growth, right? I suffered a lot from that earlier in my career because I'm like, no, I'm going to get this done on my own.
Figure it out.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's horrible. That was the worst approach I could have taken.
Yeah.
And as I evolved, I learned to be more open and be also relational with other people and have true, authentic relationships with people so that you can have that, right? Like you can have someone you can reach out that's maybe been in a situation like that, and you can at least bounce ideas off each other. It's so invaluable to have that. And that's why, for me, it prompted me into being into this space of podcasting like you
Yes,
are. And I'm trying to get my podcast to take off, and it's around imposter syndrome.
Okay.
And I think a lot of like what we do and how we feel sometimes as imposters because we don't open ourselves up to the possibilities of having someone else help us get there.
Yeah.
And rest assured that I wouldn't have been where I'm at now in life if I didn't have people that believed in me, people that gave me guidance, people that were there for me when I needed them, when things got tough. And so mentorship is so important, which again, with the LABC, that mentorship program, that's how we created that. We wanted to make sure that people knew that there was someone out there that's been through it, or someone out there that can help you, or someone out there that can hear you.
Yes, sir.
And so the mentorship program for the LABC is so big for us.
Well, that's a good segue. You know, the LABC, you know, the Latino Association of Basketball Coaches. What does it mean to you first?
Yeah, you know, I met Jason a long time ago here. Now I think I've been with the org, I want to say 7, 8 years. The first time I met Jason and I learned about it, I'm like, wow,
Yeah,
there's something
powerful.
like this,
Powerful, man.
you know? And because when I first got into coaching, I didn't see myself on the other sidelines.
Yeah,
I didn't see anyone that looked like me. And to know that there's someone putting something together that kind of puts us at a forefront and tells our stories. I told Jason, I'm like, hey man, I'm all in.
Yeah.
Like I truly believe in what you're doing and your vision. And so we've been trying to, you know, help him kind of elevate this thing. And it's gotten so much better.
Yeah.
From the, like you said, from the time he was in a room with 5 other people kind of just bouncing ideas,
yeah,
to all of a sudden now our membership, we have a couple hundred on the men and women's side. It's such a powerful thing for Latinos to be a part of, right? And we're trying to branch it out. You know, now that I'm an administrator, no longer coaching, to have some administrators, you know, and hopefully be able to help some people along the way, man. But LABC is something that's near and dear to my heart, and I'm thankful that Jason's allowed us to be part of it.
and it's beautiful to watch because even the last time when I first went to an LABC meeting was the last time it was in San Antonio, and there wasn't very many people. But to see where it's at now, to see how many people are actively engaged in it, whether it's online or they show up to the luncheon at the Final Four, whatever it is, it's powerful to know that everybody's uplifting each other and they're truly supportive. I mean, no matter who you talk to in the room, maybe never met them ever in your life, but so welcoming and willing to help. You know, and I think that's what it's all about.
And that's a tribute to Jason and what he wanted to do, right? Like it was one of those things where this is about, no matter who you are in this profession as a Latino, right?
Yeah.
We're going to open the door and kind of help each other out, right? And so I think that's the number one thing I think our members get is that access of being able to get on the horn with somebody or meet someone that you've never met. Like, oh, you're Latino. And one of the things with the Latino stuff, like I grew up in a very predominant Mexican culture, right? I'm Mexican-American. My parents are from Mexico. And so the diversity within the Latino community
It's vast, yeah.
is so vast, right? And so that's another thing that I really embrace is like now having a better understanding of that.
Yeah.
Is just enhances who I am as a Latino and how, you know, my umbrella of Latinohood is so much bigger now.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, I mean, to take something, again, a vision,
Yeah.
and to see it come to fruition, it's awesome. And I'm happy for him and I'm proud of him, and I appreciate his friendship as well. So where do you want to see this thing grow into?
You know, we kind of met a little bit last night. I think the message is like we haven't touched the surface on this thing. And so, you know, we need to plan this out. We have our second clinic in San Diego, September 12th and 13th. So we're going to try and do some good things with that. The one in Miami was a great success. And it just kind of, it's more of a building block of, all right, here we have the luncheon. We have the organization. We have the luncheon. Now on the women's side, we've had our 3rd year where we've had a social for them, you know. And then now Miami with our first clinic, San Diego with our second clinic. I think for us, the accessibility that we have in our relationships, what we develop as an organization, right? The amount of coaches we know, that we can put some special things together in these clinics, doing some fundraising opportunities with maybe a golf tournament and doing some other things that kind of will help us kind of continue to build this organization to what I think it really should be.
And I think it's powerful too to have guys like Jose or Frank or Antonio, you know, just help elevate it. They're all in on this stuff, and you know, what is the impact that you feel guys like that have had?
It's incredible, man, because you know those guys. We make a call, and I don't think they've ever said no. Right, like they're the commitment level of those people. They know how special this thing that Jason's put together is, and to their credit, man, to want to help us elevate this thing is again just a tribute to who we are as Latinos in a community, and that we are very community based and we want to help each other out.
Yeah.
And so those guys have been great. And Ron Sanchez was there at the luncheon.
Yes, sir.
People like them are just Bellado, who's now an AD.
And Mike's a good dude too, man.
In Dade County, I think, in Florida somewhere.
Yep.
But those kind of people for us, it's just like it's so invaluable to have because it also attracts membership. Because like, hey, this guy who's like at the peak of his career,
at the highest level,
right? Like this guy is part of this organization.
Yeah.
I need to be part of that organization. And so the good thing I think is our luncheons have gotten better. This last luncheon we had with 100 plus people, we're a very class act organization and we do things well. We run events well.
For sure.
And it's unique in the sense that we're just not trying to have a meet and greet.
Yeah.
Right. Like we want to honor people. We want to continue to elevate people that have done stuff in the world of basketball in the Latino community. Right. Like
acknowledge what they've helped grow and
Tony
start.
Nunez had no idea, and we do that, and all of a sudden, this thing is just like so things like that, man. And then Javier, who came out and was our keynote speaker. I mean,
oh man, I tell you what, Javier's in the first 2 minutes of hearing him talk, I was already taken away. I was like, wow, I was instantly inspired by the things he was saying and what he was talking about. Just 2 minutes into the conversation. I mean, guys like that help. And he's not even a basketball coach, right? He's in the field of hockey,
right? But he's a Latino and one of the only Latino owners of a franchise or president, CEO.
I think he said he was the only one of any of the 5 major sports to be the CEO of a franchise.
And those are the things we want and want to highlight because the more and more we see ourselves in that space, there are younger people that are like, man, I can do that.
For sure.
I should be there, right? And I think that kind of creates a pivot in people's lives that are younger to say, oh,
they can see themselves in them.
Absolutely, man.
That's what it's all about. Even me, like I said, I never thought about those things, but I was thinking of maybe if we seen these guys when we were a little younger. Even Coach here, you can't see him. Adam, say hi. Yeah. So Adam's first time young coach, but just listening to Javier talk and meeting Tommy Nunez and listening to his stories. I mean, he came back just like blown away. He just, again, inspired by what was going on.
Well, the funny part with him is I finally put 2 and 2 together because Jason talked about his story when he was 16 and it was at one of his camps. Yeah. I was in the Latino tournament in Phoenix.
Yep.
And that's how I got a contract to play in Mexico.
Started in Phoenix at Tommy's tournament.
Yeah.
And it's huge. It's one of the big national tournaments.
It was huge because, like I was a role player in college.
Yeah.
My first 2 years, I was a scorer. I could score, rebound, defend. My last 2 years, I played with a couple All-Americans that I really didn't have to.
Yeah.
So point-wise, I wasn't, I could score, but I didn't need to. And so I think in that tournament, I averaged about 35 a game. And I just had a great offensive output, and it gave me an opportunity to go there. So I thanked him when I saw him because I was like, yeah, absolutely, man, because it's...
He doesn't even realize the impact probably he's having on so many people.
And that's the thing, man. His purpose is so beyond any recognition for him that for him, he knew that he had something special, and putting this together opened up doors for many, many people.
Many people. Even in Texas, right? We have our own Latino circuit of tournaments, and it's huge.
Yeah.
It's been going on for a long time, but the Tommy Nunez tournament was always like the pinnacle of it.
Yeah.
Even out in Texas, everybody knew you got to go to Phoenix.
Yeah.
You got to go play the best, and so, I appreciated his time and just sitting and talking to him afterwards and just chopping it up like this, and he was so cool, so friendly about it.
Yeah, man. He's very approachable, for sure.
LABC.
Yeah.
You guys offer a clinic, mentorship. I want you to do me a favor and send a quick invite, shout out to anybody that's not a part of the organization, that's maybe in Texas or in San Antonio, what to expect next year at the luncheon.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're still planning that thing, but we're looking to honor another big person in the Lifetime Achievement Award. We want to try and find a coach that is doing some great things in the community, not just with basketball, but just doing great things in the community. And I think that's important to highlight. But But the LABC is just going to continue to grow. And again, our membership fees are so minimal. It's
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
It's like not
Especially for what you get. Like I said, you get the mentorship
Yeah.
program if you want to be a part of it.
Right.
You get Zoom calls all the time where you're just talking to somebody who's done it.
Absolutely.
You know, the clinic,
Yeah.
the lunch. I mean, just even the other day, another coach had a question.
Yeah.
Coach Lopez. And I said, well, let's call Omar. Omar probably has a better idea of what the answer is.
Yeah.
And then you picked up the phone, answered the question, and that kind of relationship is what's important about the LABC.
Absolutely, man. It's an open door deal. Again, going back to you're not going to do it on your own.
Yeah.
So here's an organization that you're going to have access to coaches, access to other people that have been in your shoes,
Yeah.
that have already done it.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to hear stories and understand that the journey is never alone.
Mm-hmm.
The journey you're going to need to, there's this book by John Gordon called Energy Bus that I give my first year coaches, and he talks a lot about the first rule of the energy bus is like you are the bus driver of your own bus,
For sure.
right?
100%.
And you set the rules of your own bus. But if you look at a bus, it's never empty, right?
Yeah.
It's always people in there.
Yeah.
And who you allow to come in and who you allow not to come in is based on the rules you create for yourself. But you have to understand that you're the bus driver of your own bus. You want to make sure you invite people into your bus so that they know who you are, what you're about, because those are the people telling your stories. To your point, Marcus, I met you a couple years ago, and all of a sudden here I am sitting with you and
For sure.
and doing this podcast with you. And again, it's because of the organization.
Yeah.
There's so much benefit to it.
And to that point, I appreciate your friendship, man. I really
of
do,
course,
man.
man.
You're a good person. You're a
course.
good dude, and you've always been willing to help if ever needed, man. So,
Anytime.
And it's real, it's genuine. And if you ever need something from me, don't hesitate.
Well, we're in your hood for
Yeah,
Final Four
yeah,
next
yeah, I
year,
guess
man.
so.
So we're gonna lean on you a little bit to find us some spots and figure out what we can do there to make you special in San Antonio.
For sure, I got you, man.
All right.
Appreciate you, bro.
All right, man. Appreciate you.
It's called Coaching Connection. It's called Coaching Connection.
Welcome to the coach's office.
Coach, I just want to say first, I appreciate you so much taking the time,
Oh my gosh.
inviting us to your home,
Yeah.
and talking a little hoops with us.
Yeah, welcome. Glad you're here.
So here in a bit, we'll bring Coach Lopez on, and you guys will be able to chop it up. But before we do that, talk to me real quick about your Final Four experience. You go every single year, I hear, with your family.
Yeah, I think this is our 30th consecutive Final Four.
Wow.
I went to 25 in a row with my father before COVID shut it down, and we weren't allowed to go. And then, unfortunately, he passed in March of the following year, right before the Final Four. And so he and I went to 25 in a row. He had been to, almost 40, probably 35, 37, 38, before I was old enough to start traveling with him. And but since he passed, my youngest son has started going with me. He's getting ready to graduate out at Tech. He's been a manager for the basketball program out at Tech the last 4 years. He's smart, though. He's not going into coaching. He's not going.
Smart guy.
Yeah. His mother and I did well on one thing there. But we've been going. And then it's really kind of become a family affair. My brother, who is an administrator at the collegiate level, and my brother-in-law, who lives here in San Antonio, travel with me this year. Also, Jaime Sierra, who's a coach, used to coach with us, the head coach up at Vandegrift High School
Nice.
in Austin. He flew out and met us out there. So we have a pretty good core group of guys that's still going, trying to keep the tradition alive. I think this is my 30th overall.
And what does it mean to you, though, to keep that tradition going?
Yeah, it's great. You get to go and see people. Now, we see guys that are kind of elder statesmen. But we remember them when we were first team all lobby.
Yeah.
We were young guys and didn't have any dollars to spare, and were just kind of in awe of going and running into so many great coaches from around the country. And it took us a little while when we were younger coaches to learn a lot of the times the guys that were the most giving and the most helpful and the most interesting to talk to and the most relatable for us were actually some of the smaller school coaches.
Absolutely.
The guys that were having to do more with less, which I think is probably most high school coaches' experience. I've always kind of felt that way. And that's what going to the Final Four has meant to me, just developing relationships with coaches all over the country.
For sure, and I agree with you fully. When we watch clinics and we talk to coaches, I feel like the personnel that we typically have in our high school, especially our school, we don't get these big time Division I type of athletes. So we've got to learn how to teach the game a certain way to match our style of play that is best suited for our athletes. And a lot of times it's the smaller schools. And when they're clinicking, it's a lot more useful information to what we got.
No, I couldn't agree more. I'll tell you who else we take a lot from are so we will look more for the Division I women's coaches. I think the women's game is sometimes you can steal some more things from them that are a little more relatable to us.
Absolutely.
Because most of our kids are going to play beneath the rim.
Yep.
And that's what most of the women's game is. And then we like some of the stuff overseas, although you don't run into very many of those guys, or at least we don't at the Final Four. Just the way they pass and cut and move, like you said, that kind of that suits some of our personnel better than maybe some of the more high flying acts that you can catch at the NCAA Division I level.
Yes, sir. Well, now I'm gonna let Coach Lopez come on and talk to you a little bit about some of the questions he has pertaining to basketball. Man, I appreciate you, Coach.
Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it.
I'm excited.
I'm so excited to be here with y'all.
Hey, Coach. I'm Coach Lopez.
Yeah, John Hirst.
All right. And,
very nice to meet you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Well, thanks for being such a great host. And I just want to give Coach Alvarado a shout out real quick. That the name of the podcast is Coaching Connections. I've never met you before.
Yeah.
So this is literally a coaching connection.
Correct.
I'm making for the first time ever.
Yeah.
So the podcast is doing its job, right? And when Coach Alvarado asked me to be a part of this and interview you for the first part of this podcast, I was excited, and I had to research everything about you real quick, and I got to say, hey, Reagan's done a great
bless your heart.
Reagan's done a great job of putting all the accomplishments that you've had online, and it was easy. And I just wanted to make sure that I didn't waste this opportunity, because I have a coach right here that has 500 wins and 30 years experience.
Yeah, I think this is the end of our 31st. I think it was my 22nd or 23rd year as a head coach.
Wow. So in the spirit of the podcast, I said, how do I get the most out of this interview for a coach that maybe just starting up, or middle school level or high school level? So I'll start off by asking you a few kind of philosophy questions of coaching. Then we'll get into some scenarios, and then maybe I'll grab the board from Coach Alvarado, and I got a quick actual basketball question to ask you.
Sure.
All right. So the first question I had that I thought about was, you've won in so many places, right? In multiple high schools at different positions on the staff, right? Head coach, assistant coach, and you've had insane success, right? Playoff runs and district championships, and you got to have some building blocks when you go into a new position at a new school. What are your core building blocks for going into a new spot, and how do you start off day one?
Well, it's funny you mentioned, I've coached at every level as you started. I started out at a middle school in Harlingen, Texas. I coached and taught there. In fact, I was the 7th and 8th grade boys and girls tennis coach at Memorial Middle School in Harlingen. And then I volunteered to get my start in basketball. I volunteered with both the football program and then the basketball program. And I was really fortunate. I worked with some great guys who really had patience with some of my ego, for lack of a better word. I think like most young coaches, I came in thinking, I was way ahead of the game. I was going to be Bobby Knight and Dean Smith and Coach K all in one. And, I was going to make it all happen. And I had the good fortune of working with people who kind of showed me the way and pulled the reins back in a little bit. And then I was able to land a job after 3 years volunteering working there in Harlingen. I got a job at McAllen High School, where I worked with the great Greg Kiger, and we had the best year in school history at that point. Made it up here to the regional tournament, where we lost to Coach Celestine and the J Mustangs. They went on to the state tournament that year. It was a great experience. And then I was fortunate. Leonel Garza at Los Fresnos High School gave me my first head coaching experience, and couldn't have asked to work for a better man, a better mentor. He was the first person that ever really empowered me as a head coach. One of the things that he encouraged me was, hey, we didn't hire you for our basketball players to be participants. We want them to be competitors. But he also allowed, showed me, hey, there's more than one way to skin a cat. You can coach many different ways. What you got to do is figure out what's going to be the best way for our kids to be competitive. And I wasn't great at it at first. It took me a little while. And we were successful. I was proud to say more successful than they had been, but we weren't as successful as I wanted us to be. And at some point, you've got to, I think, look in the mirror and say, okay, well, there's other people out there doing things better than I am. And my wife and I started looking around for an opportunity to move up the state. We knew San Antonio was a really hard area to get into. And there was kind of a long process, but I took the assistant's job after 5 years. Being a head coach at Los Fresnos, I took the assistant's job at Clark High School, where I worked with legendary Kevin Hamilton. They just renamed the gym after him, unfortunately, after his untimely passing. And I spent 3 years with Kevin, and they were 3 of the most influential seasons of my life. I learned so much about Kevin Hamilton. Was great about the word culture before anybody used the word culture. Now it's on every podcast you hear. It's in every article. It's on every social media post. It's culture, culture, culture. But he had relationships with kids and former players that allowed him to coach in a really tough way, but they still knew that he loved them. And I envied that. That's how I always felt inside, but I wasn't always great at bridging that gap. I felt like maybe in hindsight, there were times when some of the kids that I had coached knew I either coached hard or knew that I loved them, but they might not have known both. And Kevin was the first guy that really kind of opened my eyes that there was a better way to do things. And so I tried to take as much as I could from Kevin. Then I was fortunate enough, after 3 years, we got the opportunity to go over and open Stevens High School. Hired a tremendous assistant coach who's still the head coach there, and Mike Raines, one of the hardest working, most loyal people I've ever known. And, you know, we got a chance to kind of start and implement things that I had learned from all these different coaches all the way along. And we really were fortunate to have some great players. And we were able to build on success. After 5 years, the opportunity was presented to me to come over and interview for the job at Reagan, and I did. We've lived in a house that is not even 5 miles from Reagan High School the entire time we've been in San Antonio, so it was a great move for my family. And then I was able to bring in JJ Anguiano, who's been assistant and been with us since the time we opened, and we've been a real collaborative effort. We've had some other great assistants, including Jaime Sierra, who's now up at Vandergrift High School and in Austin, and we've had others come through as well. And we've really tried to be collaborative since we got here. I would say my journey was one of learning sometimes the hard way, but also being empowered to do things my way, to not try to do things like some other coach that I saw who I maybe admired or respected. I would try to steal ideas from them, both on and off the court, how they did things, and then try to kind of twist them and turn them to suit my needs and suit my personality, and then hopefully suit our personnel and our community. I kind of went on a long tangent there. I hope that answered your question.
No, that was great, Coach. If I'm a young coach and I'm hearing you talk, I'm taking in every word that you're saying. So I think the next question I have, sticking on maybe looking back on your 500-win journey, anything that you could go back and tell one win coach before you got 500 to do something different along the way?
Well, I can say this. In my first year at Los Fresnos, as at my first head coaching job, back then 5A was the largest classification, and we scheduled all of our non-conference, non-district games were against 5As. We were a 4A at the time, and all of our tournaments were 5A tournaments. And I can tell you we were 0-5 to start my head coaching career, which immediately did not make me feel as confident as I had. And we were in the consolation bracket of a tournament in Harlingen, and we played a 1A team from San Perlita, and they had 6 kids dressed out, and we go out there to play them, and we're losing pretty much the whole game. And then luckily in the fourth quarter, they had one of their players foul out. And then I figured out, oh yeah, their other guy over there that's playing now, he's got 4 fouls. So we did everything we could to get him fouled out. We're still losing. Keep in mind, we're playing now 5-on-4, and we finally score with about 2 or 3 minutes of play left in the fourth quarter to take the lead. And then we went 4 corners and held the ball the rest of the way. 5-on-4 against a 1A team. We were a 4A team, and that was win number 1. So I guess what I would say is don't have foolish pride. You know, just get the win. We think that scheduling up and scheduling tougher only makes you better prepared if you really do have aspirations to go to the playoffs. And I've never been anywhere that wasn't the goal. We've always wanted to make the playoffs, play our best basketball at the end of the season, and then try to get hot and play well all the way through the playoffs as far as we were capable. It hadn't always worked out that way. And so the 500 wins for us was as a program and as you know, parts of a part of a bigger family unit that has done everything with the 500 wins. We've always tried to do things a certain way. So the 500 might mean a little more to us than it does others. I would encourage guys, young coaches, know your personnel, but don't coach for your ego. Like, you shouldn't be concerned with the number of your wins. We've never really thought. I didn't know that we had my 300th win. My father always tracked all of my wins. He always knew my record. I never knew our record. And when we got to 300, you know, he celebrated it, and then he tracked it to 400, and then unfortunately he passed before we got to 500. But we were always trying to get that playoff win. We wanted to be putting ourselves through district play and tournament play in a position to be mentally and physically tough enough to try to win some playoff games. And that's, for the most part, I think it's worked out for us. Again, that suits my personality, and I think it suits our community. Every coach's situation is different. But if you ask me, I think that's a great way to go. Certainly at the end of the day, you know, you can look in the mirror and put your head on the pillow at night and feel like you were trying to do things a certain way and feel proud of it.
Good. So you're right. Coaches do come into different scenarios all the time. And one of the big scenarios that comes up, you know, a coach takes a new job or you get lucky enough to get a good player. You know, the funny thing about coaching is there's always great players, right? And then there's a coach behind him on the sideline yelling no until the shot goes in, and then it's yes, right? Yeah, great shot. So talk to me a little bit about having great players and the balance between coaching them and letting them be great.
Ooh, that's a great question. When I was a young coach at Los Fresnos, we hosted a tournament right down by South Padre Island. We would bring great teams in. We always brought in Houston Milby and Houston Sharpstown. Jim Reenster, who coached at Sharpstown, and they had unbelievable talent. We're in the Valley. I'd never seen talent like they had. I mean, it was just amazing. And I remember asking Coach Reenstra one year at the tournament, I said, Coach, with all of those players, do you just lay awake at night just dreaming up all the different, I mean, all that talent? You just lay awake at night dreaming about all of the different things that you can do and all of the different things you can run? And he said, you know, it's funny. I really do the opposite. I lay awake and think about, don't overcoach this group. We've got more talent than a lot of other people, and I need to make sure that they're loose and that they'll play hard and play to their strengths. And that's something that always stuck out to me. Our philosophy would be, if you're a new coach coming into a situation or you get a great player to come, how can you put that player in a position to have success that doesn't detract from the rest of the team? Because you're never going to fully, take advantage of a great player's talent and skill level if they're out there trying to go 1-on-5. They're just not. The team is going to end up being less than what I think it could have been. I think that's one of the coach's biggest challenges. How do I maximize my best player, but in conjunction with the how can the rest of the team play? And a lot of that's going to come down to the personality of your best player. Can he or she bring in and make the others feel appreciated? Because inevitably they're going to get the most shots. They're the best player. They're going to get the most shots. Whether the coaches are calling plays for them or not, they're the best player. They're going to end up getting the most shots. I think it's important that you work on, as a coach, putting them in positions to develop relationships with their teammates. And then you have to mentor them into, hey, it's going to mean more coming from you than from the coaching staff if you're really working hard to show your teammates how much you value them, because you're not, a rising tide raises all ships, right? I mean, the better our team is, the more accolades and the more attention all of our players are going to get. And not all of our players are equal, and they never are going to be equal. But we want to try to get the tide as high as we're capable of getting it, thus having the most success, thus getting more accolades for the individual.
Yeah, that's great. So, great job, Coach. I'm going to give you off some scenarios that probably a young coach coming in, or you know, in your 30 years, I'm sure you've had a young team before, and you probably can see or can foresee a rough season or some losses or maybe not the kind of playoff success you're looking for. How do you keep a team like that engaged and your coaching staff engaged throughout the entire season, and you don't let those wins and losses maybe affect as much as a kid turning into a sophomore or a senior, how he's going to be then, you know?
Well, I think it's important to keep your standards high. I think the standards need to stay where they are, both on and off the court. But I also think there's nothing wrong with, especially an inexperienced team, or maybe you've got a team coming back with quite a bit of experience, and it's one of those years where the good news is we got a lot of guys back. The bad news is it's the same guys, and we weren't very good the year before, right? So you have experience, but maybe the skill set isn't there. And we're big believers in player development. We really work hard to try to maximize, you know, our guys' skill sets and strength and competitive level. But not every year you're going to have as much talent. And so I would say when we've had some of those teams, we've had to make smaller action steps all the way down to, you know, when one year we had a team where literally we would talk about trying, hey, let's win this quarter. You know, let's win this quarter. And maybe we're down 30 at the end of 3 quarters, and we've lost all 3 quarters by 10 or more. And we're talking to them in that huddle in the middle of the 3rd and 4th quarter, like, hey, we got to win this quarter. Feel good about ourselves before we walk out the door here. Let them know that we didn't give up. We didn't quit. We kept fighting. Because sometimes, especially with younger teams or less experienced or just flat less skilled teams, you're going to play someone who can overwhelm you. And so I think it's important that we teach things above just putting the ball in the hole or getting back, running an out of bounds play correctly. You got to teach kids, you know, how to compete and how to not to quit and how to take pride in themselves and have pride in the program and represent and try to live up to a standard. And what happens is they win that quarter. Then the next game, maybe okay, we're going to win 2. It doesn't have to be back-to-back quarters, but we're going to win 2 quarters tonight. We're not leaving this gym without winning 2 quarters. And then, you know, you try to build on that. And then hopefully somewhere in the schedule, you play someone who doesn't completely overwhelm you, but maybe they're still a little bit better than you, and you can go out there and fight and find a way to win. And those are super gratifying wins, some of the most gratifying wins we've had in our career.
Yep. What about with the team? You know, I think it's a common problem sometimes. Everybody always says, hey, if my best player was a better leader or if he was a better personality, we might be a little better. How do you deal with situations like that where you maybe don't have the greatest leader as your best player, or maybe the greatest leader on your team isn't your best player, right? So then you got to kind of find that balance. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's one of the great questions in coaching at our level, at the high school level. We go to the Final Four and we talk to friends that are coaching at the college level, and I hear them complain and moan and, oh, this guy's so immature and he can't. And I think, you know, I'll ask, hey, who's the most immature guy on your team? And they'll inevitably say, you know, it's this guy. I say, how old is that guy? Oh, he's only 18. I said, yeah, that guy would be our most mature guy. That guy we'd give our eye teeth for, right? I mean, he would be our leader. And he's your most immature guy, but everything's relative. Usually it's your younger players. They don't really know things. Everybody would like to have their best player to be a great leader. We've been fortunate enough to have that, but not very often. It's less common than I think most coaches will admit. I've always had a philosophy, and I got it from my father, who coached 39 years and really was my hero and my idol growing up, and I wanted to be a lot like him. And he used to say, and I've said this, repeated this untold number of times, I think we do a disservice, especially at the high school level, of trying to teach every kid leadership. Not every kid's comfortable, certainly not at specific ages. Every kid runs their own race. Like, they're not all starting at the same starting line. And some kids, you're trying to put leadership responsibility. Hey, you're supposed to be a leader out here. But it doesn't matter if they're a senior or an upperclassman. They're just not ready to step into that role. And some kids just, frankly, are not wired that way. My dad always said we ought to do a better job of teaching kids how to be good followers. Because if they're not going to be leaders, they're going to inevitably follow somebody. And maybe we should invest a little bit more time in teaching those kids how to learn who best to follow. Because so many times, you know, you get kids that are really pretty good kids, but they're not really leaders. And I'm talking about school, not just a basketball team. but certainly in basketball. And they're going to follow somebody. They're going to fall on one side of the fence or the other. And if we do a good job as coaches of identifying, hey, here are the standards, here are what we're looking for, and it doesn't have to be our best player. Some of our leaders were guys that came off of the bench. Some of them were the last guy that came off of the bench, and they'd be the first one in the weight room every morning, and they'd be the last guy in the gym every day. And we really try to target those fence sitters, those middle of the road kids, and talk to them about if they're not ready to be a leader, don't try to force them into it. You're setting them up for failure. They're not going to be good leaders until they're ready to be. I think you got to teach how to be, but don't force it upon them when they're not ready. When they're not ready, teach them who to follow, who is a quality leader, and why. It's not just because they're the best player or they're the leading scorer. It's because they are doing things right to live up to our program standard or our campus's standards or whatever it may be.
Guys, that was such a great answer.
Well, broken clock's right twice a day.
So, speaking on that and the scenarios that you just talked about, what about when you don't have a lot of athleticism on your team and you got to kind of, as a coach, manufacture ways to score the ball or defend? What's your ideas on that?
Well, it's funny you ask. Again, just coaching different places, down in Los Fresnos, where our best post player we ever had was about 6'1" and 240, and had about a credit card vertical. That's kind where you jump up as high as you can and you can slide that credit card right between their feet. That was our best post player. And then we were fortunate enough at Stevens, we had just some jaw-dropping, just athleticism and talent. And then we come to Reagan, and we've certainly had some great players. But everything's relative. And the teams that we're trying to beat and advance to play, I think it's fair to say we have very rarely, if ever, gone out and just out-talented very many of the best teams. We've got to find a different way to play. And so we're a big believer on, we're very honest. Hey, our program is not for everybody because we have high standards, and we're pretty relentless on following those. Every kid's going to have a neat and normal haircut. We're going to keep our jerseys tucked in. We all wear white mid-calf socks. We ask each kid to make some minor sacrifices to be a part of something bigger than themselves. Now, the older I get, the more minor I think those sacrifices are. But to every incoming 14 and 15-year-old, those are not minor sacrifices. Those are big sacrifices to many of them, and sometimes to their parents. But we also are difficult because we don't know really how we're going to play year to year because we don't always have, the same size, the same talent, the same skill set. And so what we try to do is every spring and summer, it's really rejuvenating as a coaching staff. We put our guys through workouts where we're really trying to emphasize player development. And then what we try to do is cut the pattern to fit the dress. And okay, what do we have? What's going to allow us to give ourselves the best chance of competing in our district and then hopefully in our region if we can make the playoffs? I'm not too interested in a style of play that allows us to win district, but we're doomed to get beat in the first round. That doesn't hold much interest. It's got to be both. So then the next step is, okay, now we've identified our talent. What's best, style of play for us? Then what we talk a lot about is, okay, how we want to play offensively has to match how we want to play defensively. And when I was a young coach, when I was starting out, I was down there at Los Fresnos, those poor kids, I was asking them, to press and run. We were trapping and we were hustling because we were good at that. And then we'd get the ball and I wanted to take real good shot selection and run around, and they couldn't do it. I was asking them to play one way defensively and play a completely opposite way offensively. And I thought I was doing everything right, but I hadn't worked with enough good people with varying styles to understand outside of our little bubble, this wasn't going to work long term. And so you grow, we took other jobs, we packed up and moved, I tried to be really smart about every move I ever made because I started with the Hall of Fame coach that I played for in Harlingen, and I had a tremendous background with him. Then I moved on to McAllen. I worked with the guy who taught me, Greg Kiger's the first guy that ever taught me, hey, you can't shame a man with no pride. Like, I want to win. Like, I grew up in a system where I'd rather lose than play a zone. Like, we were going to play full court man. And then I got to work with Coach Kiger, and he was like, I'll get in the zone if it means we can win. I want to win. And it was kind of shook the ground beneath me, and I was a little uncomfortable with it. And but he was competitive, ultra competitive in a different way than I was used to. And then I came up and worked with Kevin, and he was a combination really of both of those previous mentors, Coach Owens and Coach Kiger. And so we get to now, what do we want to do? Well, we emphasize our defense and offensive philosophy for this year's team have to match. It doesn't matter what we do. They got to be in concert with each other. They got to be married together. One has to complement the other and vice versa. And then we think, okay, but we don't want to get away. Like, what are some of our core foundations? Well, offensively, and I'm not a huge analytics guy, but we've delved into them enough in the past, really post-COVID, when technology has caught up and become simple enough for an old guy like me. I can synthesize some of the material now. I can tell you this, I go back and chart, Coach, if you get a minimum of 3 ball reversals and a minimum of 1 paint touch in a half court set, I'm talking about, no transition, no out of bounds play, just in a half court set, we scored at almost a 76% rate. When we did not, we scored less than a 30% rate. And that is every year since COVID, every year. Now, that's not because we're running the greatest plays in the world. It's because you're moving the defense and you're putting pressure on the paint. You're putting pressure on the rim. You got to have at least 1 paint touch, but you're making the defense shift. And at our level, how many teams do you scout where their help side is really good? And it gets worse with every ball reversal, especially if you're mixing in paint touches. So then we start talking about offensively. We haven't really had tremendous size or post play the last several years, so we've gone to more of a 5-out, which was something new for us. We hadn't really played that way before, and we were lucky enough to have success with it. We've got some young guys coming this spring, maybe next year, that will allow us to play more bigs and more post-oriented, but our philosophy won't change. The numbers are what they are. If you get a minimum of 3 ball reversals and a paint touch, then I think you're inevitably going to score at a higher percentage. Now, again, we also like to get out and run in transition. We'd like to score in 7 seconds or less if we can. We think of baseline out of bounds and sideline out of bounds as special teams, like in football. Those are hidden points. Hidden points like free throws. We don't think a lot of people put as much emphasis on those as we do. But conversely, so then if that's what we believe offensively, and we've looked at those numbers, then defensively it doesn't. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. I don't care if we're in a man. We've been we're still man-based. We try to keep everything over on a side if we can. But we don't want ball reversals and paint touches because we know what that does for us when we have the ball. We really want to limit that. And again, most of the time at the high school level, especially early in the season when kids are still coming out of the summer, there's not very many teams that have a guy that aren't going to take a bad shot if you let them. So that's what we really try to emphasize. I didn't come up with this. We learned this from Coach Beard, who's now at Ole Miss, and I'm sure he learned it from somebody else. But there's really 4 things. You can distill it down into 4 things. And we talk about this with our kids, and we got to educate our parents because they don't understand. Why are we passing the ball around so much? 4 things win and lose you basketball games. And if you really think about it, it's at the high school, college, and NBA level. And probably the Euro League, probably more the Euro League. And especially if you had a shot clock, which, by the way, we're huge proponents of. If this goes viral, we need a shot clock in Texas. What 4 things are like shot selection and turnovers on offense. Shot selection, because a quick bad shot is the same thing as a turnover. You can't get your defense back. And if somebody's pressing us, we would rather take a 10-second call. I'd rather throw it out of bounds. At least then we can set up our defense. A live ball turnover or coming down and taking a quick bad shot where nobody knows it's going up and then we can't get back and get our defense set, that just kills you. So those 2 things, shot selection, turnover. Then the other thing is defensive transition. You got to get your defense back and get it set, and then you got to close the deal. You got a defensive rebound. If you go and chart your statistics, any way you look at your film, if you win the battle in those 4 things, you're going to win 99% of your games or more. There will be the occasional game that you throw out just because, like we talked about earlier, somebody just overwhelms you with talent. They just got more and they can just do things you can't. But if you take good shots and you don't turn it over and you get back and you set your defense and then you finish every defensive possession, the defensive rebound, you're going to win 99% of your games. So I think when the less talent you have, I think the more those things are important. And again, I say that, listen, I've coached at places where I would die to have some of the kids that we have at Reagan, but everything is relative. And, we're trying, we still have aspirations. We want to play in the Dome. We want to go and play in the Final Four in Texas and at the state tournament. And to beat those teams, I think it's even more important that you take care of the ball, you get good shot selection. And it doesn't really matter what, again, you're a continuity guy, you're a quick hitter guy, all that's fine. Get the ball moving, put pressure on the rim, however you want to do it, whatever suits, like I said, cut the pattern to fit the dress. And then, be solid defensively and finish with rebounds. And I think that gives teams with maybe less athleticism or less overall talent, certainly less depth, the opportunity to compete at a higher level against those teams that can overwhelm them at times.
Yeah, no, that's great. So a couple of basketball questions before I get off here. Scenario comes up at the end of a game. You're up by 3. Other team's coming down. Are you fouling or are you letting them take a 3?
Great question. Before I give you my answer, I'm going to ask you a question back. Okay?
Okay.
What do you practice?
Oh, that's a good question.
I'm going to do what we practice. Like if you're a guy that believes in it, then you better know, okay, how much time is going to be left? Because you don't want to do that too early. Everybody argues, hey, I know the argument. A 3 can beat you, but a 2 can only. Okay, that's good. But if you don't practice it, especially at our level, at the high school level, you're going to have some kid screwed up, and that's not going to be that kid's fault. Everybody in the stands is going to think it is. And the coach is going to throw his hands up on his head, and he's not going to want to look like the dummy. I don't want to look like the dummy. And so what are we doing? Then we're kind of, putting it off on the kid. But if you haven't practiced it, and I mean really drilled it, it's not an end-of-game scenario for you, 2-3 times a week, then I would not foul. I would not foul. We've had teams where we did try to foul, and we did. We had other teams where we did not. Past couple of years, we did not. We haven't. Because we didn't feel like we were big enough and strong enough necessarily to hold somebody off the block late in the game when you figure the officials are not going to call very much inside. And so I'm a little more sensitive to, hey, let's just try to get a stop. If they miss a long shot, we've got a better chance of tracking down a long miss than we do, a short free throw miss where somebody might just go over our back or shove us out of the way and we don't have enough muscle down there to hold them off. But regardless of what you're going to do in that situation, you better drill it. It's got to be an end-of-game scenario, especially at the high school level, because, and this is for every scenario. It's amazing. Here, I think I'm at practice just this last week, and I think we're at workout, and I think, oh my gosh, we have covered this 1,000 times, whatever the situation is. But, I've covered it 1,000 times. That sophomore out there, he's still a sophomore. He's only covered it about 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know. But he doesn't know what he doesn't know. And so, again, that's coaching. That's where it comes in. So I'm a big believer in those type of situations. Figure out if you're going to foul, you can't foul. I mean, most people, I think, would say under 7, certainly under 6 seconds, something like that. But, then you got to have that talk with your coaching staff. Do we want to foul? What if there's only 2 or 3 seconds left? Well, then I'm worried about fouling him on the damn shot. Mm-hmm. And they make it, and then you or they're shooting 3 free throws now, and again. And
you got to have a good inbounder, right?
100%.
That's an underrated part of the game.
Absolutely.
You have a good inbounder.
Yeah, can we get the ball inbounds? Can we get it inbounds? Because maybe we're out of timeouts. Do we know how to line up? Can we get it inbounds? There's a lot that goes into it. I think you and your staff would have to talk about it, and then you've got to drill that stuff. If you don't drill it, then don't do it.
Gotcha. Great answer, Coach. All right, now maybe on the board here a little bit.
Yeah.
I think I got a marker here. I think a common scenario that happens with young coaches or even experienced coaches, you go play the dude, right? He may be one of the better guards in the state, and maybe his team isn't so at his level.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing on the board? What schemes are you drawing up? Can you draw up a scheme? What do you do to get his ball out of his hands, or do you do anything crazy to keep him from catching it or anything like that?
Yeah. Well, I don't know what I'll draw, but again, Coach, I'm old, so we've done a little bit of everything. We've tried everything, and if it's there's just so many different scenarios. Is it a point guard? Is he going to bring the ball up the floor? Is it a shooting guard? Are they going to try to bring him off screens? Is it a big kid? And are you going to try to double down? Are they going to try to force feed him into the block? I think you can do a lot of different things. I would say, like let's take a point guard, for example. Again, Mike Wacker, who's, forgotten more basketball than I know, played for the great Abe Lemons at Texas. And he would say, if it's a guy bringing the ball up the floor, he'd say, forget the defense, just run 2 guys at him. Just goes in 2 guys. You know why? Because that guy, he can score 20. Those other guys, they can't score 20. They can't. They're going to score 2 or 4 or 6, but they're not going to score 20. Just get the ball out of that guy's hands. And he would be hilarious, and he would say it that way. And then you start thinking, well, that's probably right. How many of the, especially if the team that they're playing on doesn't have that many other talented kids, why wouldn't you just run the double at them as soon as they touch it?
Yeah.
Just force them to get the ball out of their hands. Now, we've tried that, and we've done it. We've also had 2 guys get split, and now that guy's running uncontested down the floor. So, again, I think you got to practice it, and you got to drill it, and you've got to understand, okay, where, especially if you can get them out of the middle. We are big believers. I don't know if this is going to show up, but good pin. We want to keep the ball out of the middle as long as possible and as much as possible. So if we're going to run and double him, we want to try to shade him out of the middle. If he'll catch it outside, and a lot of guys, they run sideline breaks. So that's great for us. That works in our favor. It makes it easier to come and double. The only question is, do you want to double him from the front or do you want to double him from behind? I would say that we really like to, once that ball gets out of this channel here, we really want to try to double from behind if we feel like we have the foot speed. But, some kids are just faster off the bounce than we are without it. And so then, they force your option. So we would prepare ahead of time. Okay, we're just going to run, let him see us and try to chase the ball out of his hands. Maybe he'll see somebody wide open and that guy will take a shot that he shouldn't take. And if he hits it, you're going to have to live with it, right?
Yeah.
But you don't want the dude to beat you, right?
Exactly.
If it's a guy that is already down here and he's a shooter and they're going to try to run him off of screens, we would do one of 2 things. We're either going to switch everything, which again is not easy to do. You've got to really practice that a lot. And what we would try to do is switch up on it. So let's say, there's kind of a pin down and the shooter is coming up. We would have this defender try to switch up. If you can't, we wouldn't really necessarily even try to steal the pass because we don't want to gamble and then let him have a wide open shot. But on the catch, again, we want to keep him to the side and force him back down where we already have help and we can rotate over behind it. But I think that switching up on it, don't let him curl and continue to curl or even, square up to the rim for that shot. We want to force him on the catch to have to put it on the deck and go back from the way that he came, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Then, of course, the other thing is you can always, if you've practiced it, you can double him on the catch. You're going to be susceptible to the slip. And if he's really a good player, you're really susceptible to a skip pass on the weak side. But again, you're going to, if he's the dude, you're going to live with somebody else beating you, right? And then finally, we can kind of flip it around. If it's a big kid inside, I'm not giving you anything. You know all of this stuff. Everybody watching this, this is like, I'm sorry, this is like.
He said, I hope he doesn't give away something he doesn't want to give away.
No, I'm just not that smart. There's tons of other, creative stuff. I just believe in don't do anything that you don't practice. And if you try to put something in 2 days, for a game, in my experience at our level at the high school, you're always going to be frustrated. It's got to be something that you do. You've got to be doing it. You may not use it in very many games, but you better have been practicing it all year because you can't. High school kids, in my experience, even some of the best teams we've ever had, if you ask them, okay, we're putting in this game plan and we practice it for 2 days, we work on it and we've done it. I'm more guilty than anybody else. It almost never works. It almost never works because it's not what they've been doing all year. And that always supersedes what you do in the last 2, 3, 4 days. So I'm a big believer on when you go to the playoffs, you better do what you do. Don't try to, I know they got a dude now and we got to do something different, but you better have, that's what kind of goes back to what I was saying before. when you're evaluating, I don't want to just beat the teams in our district, but in our region, we better have some other things in our back pocket. And so we try to work on things that try to see big, because like, I don't know, with realignment, I don't even know who's in y'all's district next year. I certainly don't know who you think the best teams in your region are going to be next year, but I bet you do. And so I would be thinking about, okay, what do we have to do first to get in the playoffs? And then if we can get in the playoffs, what do we have to do to be the district champions? And then if we can be the district champions, what do we have to do to win that first playoff game? And I don't worry about much beyond that, because the playoffs, who knows? You know, people get upset and injuries and whatever, you know, but the first one's always the hardest one to win. Those are the games that we try to kind of prepare ourselves for. But anyway, on the block, I would say this. One rule and I learned this from Kevin Hamilton. If they get a big, we like to double from the backside, like a lot of people do. But what we would do is we really try to double with a smaller guard. And our point of emphasis is get in and take his feet away. Don't worry about the fact that he can see over you. Just show your hands, get as big as you can, but squeeze him, take away his space, invade his personal space. We talk about that a lot. Like, don't foul him, but get in, make him uncomfortable. Big guys are inevitably going to have slower feet than a smaller, quicker guy. And we usually double with, you got to have as much beef or size or length or whatever you may have to be on the big originally. But if you're going to double them, we like to double with somebody smaller and quicker and really try to crowd them. Even if especially if they've already caught it, we want to try to take their feet away. Just get in there and make it uncomfortable for them so they can't go anywhere. Show your hands, be as big as you are. But we've had 5'5" guys go down and double a 6'8" guy and really try to crowd them and take their feet away. And more often than not, I would say that's one thing on the block we've had the most success with, when we've had to double somebody who has a really good big play.
Yeah, it's a great term, take the feet away. I don't think I've ever thought of it like that, and that's a good one. So thanks, Coach.
Yeah, I don't know. I said, there's real high-level technical stuff there.
Well, I didn't want you to put something on this board and then your district rival is going to be like, oh, that's what's coming.
No, man, they know. They're all watching film. We got so many good coaches. I'm not giving away anything.
All right. So, hey, thank you, Coach. You've been a great host for us.
Oh, you bet.
Thank you for answering the questions.
Like I told you before we started filming, if nothing else, we can tell you what not to do. Right?
Thanks.
Do the opposite. We appreciate you coming out. We're flattered to be asked and flattered to be out here with you guys, and love to talk basketball with anybody who is interested. Not that many guys want to sit around and talk basketball. I take a board with me everywhere I go. My father gave me a dry erase board when I took my first job at Memorial Middle School in Harlingen, and 31 years ago, and I've carried it with me ever since. So anytime we're at a convention or a clinic, I've got my original board, and we've always got it somewhere handy. So somebody starts talking basketball, you can pull it out. And I don't always have a pen that is that good. Sometimes my pens are a little drier.
Find a good pen, it's like magic.
Yeah. And I like the black ones. For whatever reason, they last longer. I don't know. Easier to see. But yeah, Coach, thanks so much. Good luck to you all this next season. And,
Thank you.
If we can help with anything at all, don't hesitate. Let me know.
All right, sounds good.
You got it, buddy.
It's called Coaching Connection. It's called Coaching Connection. It's called Coaching Connection.